All right, hey everybody, welcome back to Uncaved. Again, my name is Shane Coyle. We have some unpacking to do. So in this one, I don't know, we call it a book club. This one I'd like to take a look at a book that I have been currently reading that I find pretty fascinating. I'm always reading books, and there's this existing joke with a great friend of mine, and the joke is about how many books that we have. We have like 20 on our nightstand. Our bookshelf is full. We have audio books. You know, we buy a book and then we read maybe the first 3, 4, 5 chapters, then we buy another book. I don't know, if I was to dig a little bit, I think I have a commitment issue somewhere in there. But hey, you know, take a number, add it to the list of things that I need to work through. But anyway, let's get back into our show. Well, I actually heard about this book from another healer doing very similar work, and he talked about it, and the way that he described it really piqued an interest. It's called The Courage to be Disliked. And I don't want to kill the author's name, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in the description below, and you can check it out. Again, the title is called The Courage to be Disliked. Let me set the stage a little bit. This book is based off of the workings of Alfred Adler, known as Adlerian Psychology. And for those that don't tend to come from the psychology world, this name might not sound too familiar. However, Adler was one of the giants in the start of the psychoanalysis and the school of thought and psychology, along with Freud and, of course, Carl Jung. Just like Carl Jung, who studied under Freud, kind of broke off into his own theories, he really brought to light this idea of what's called the shadow, the shadower, these very subconscious, unconscious parts of self, as well as the archetypes. So when you hear shadow or dealing with archetypes, we must give homage to Carl Jung. And Adler kind of broke off from the school of thought with Freud as far as not being so deterministic or ideological with Freud's theory of, for simplicity reasons, more of a cause and effect. With Adler, he tended to look at finding the purpose in our life, and if we can't find purpose in our life, we will engage in disturbing type behaviors. Again, this is really in simplistic forms due to it's such a broad topic that would take up the whole podcast time. The book really explores this idea of choice, choice within the present moment. Again, there's a lot of other theories that have been related to this. You know, Victor Frankl could be one with his logo theory and finding the purpose in life. Obviously, we have Carl Jung, and life isn't what happens to us, it's who we choose to become. There's great Greek philosophies, even with Socrates, that come from this type of modality, as well as connecting threads to Jean-Paul Sartre with existentialism. And I want to pull out a couple of interesting quotes here. Within this book, it's interesting. It is a dialogue between this gentleman and this youth, and they're kind of going in this debate about, is it a choice? This gentleman doesn't want to be unhappy anymore. So is this a choice or is this not a choice? And we follow these two individuals, one recognizing, calling himself the philosopher, and the other one the youth. In this book, this is actually from Adler, it says, no experience is in itself a cause of our success or failure. We do not suffer from the shock of our experience, the so-called trauma, but instead we make out of them whatever suits our purpose. We are not determined by our experiences, but by the meaning we give them is self-determining. Sitting with that was a lot. So just kind of sit with that for a second. And let's kind of break that down as far as this approach. Now, look, I have come in the psychology department, and you probably heard in past episodes. So we do look at, right? We look, childhood and the belief systems and the inner child and all that stuff. And they're not saying that isn't part of it. They're saying that is part of it. And we make choices, even in those choices are unconsciously, subconscious. We do make choices. And within those choices, fulfill that purpose. They can fulfill that. So within this book, this dialogue is actually bringing awareness around choice or not choice. So within this back and forth dialogue, it brings great questions. Do we have to go there, or is it in the present moment we get to make choices, even amongst all of those belief systems. Now, again, because I do come from that modality, this very Freudian, psychoanalytical, somatic, where we look at all these things, we're dealing with parts, we're dealing with belief systems and narratives, but they're saying, why do we need to go there? That even though we did make choices unconsciously through that experience, that means that in the present moment, we can also make another choice now. They're not denying that that choice that you made served a purpose for at that time, but why do we have to keep focusing on that? The idea is to make choices in the present moment of what we want to do with that. So that idea of, the cards we've been dealt, great. So now, how do you want to play with your cards? It goes back to this thing that I was told a long time ago, that transformation is instantaneous. So it kind of gives way, and this Adler approach gives way into that. It's that instantaneously we can make a conscious choice. Yes, those were unconscious things and why we created our behaviors. Yes, we get the survival. Yes, they fulfilled a certain need. However, in the present moment, we can bring a sense of consciousness in there and we can move forward from that place. And what he's saying is, within that, it's going to take courage. And this is really interesting for me. I've mentioned before where my journey started. I got clean from my substance. I started in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, if you've ever been in a room, or some of you ever heard this before, it's not pertaining just to Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous or Codependence Anonymous. It's not particularly just for those. It's just a saying, the serenity prayer, where it says, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Breaking that down, putting it into this kind of modality, this is where it becomes really interesting for me, because the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. We're going down some interesting wormholes for a second, so we're all going to put it together. Again, remember, my whole idea is put it in a package. You get the home recovery game. You get to sit at home and play this with your friends. That's my hopes. Okay, so taking that idea of the things that we cannot change from the Serenity Prayer, we're going to jump back into the book and read a quote from it. Does fixating on what you were born with change the reality? That was so yummy that I'm going to go ahead and repeat it one more time. Does fixating on what you were born with change the reality? Insert long pause for dramatic effect. Matching it up with this idea of to accept the things that I cannot change. We're not going to change. I am not going to change my abandonment from my past. I'm not going to change the abuse and the molestation from my past. I just can't do that. There within there is the acceptance, the courage to accept, to change the things that I can. The courage, and this is what this Adler modality is based around, is the psychology of courage in the present moment. What can I change in the now? And again, you can put this in many categories of what you can change in the now, what you cannot change. So I'm just using it from this place. That idea is, can I exhibit the courage? And what they're talking about is we stay, because within the new lifestyle, the idea is that we consciously, unconsciously make decisions, and we make decisions to live, and I'll just use this idea of unhappiness. And if you pick up the book, you'll kind of hear these two dialogues going back about, well, how did I make the choice to be unhappy? I don't want to be unhappy. And so the philosopher, quote unquote, therapist is talking about, well, you are making a choice to stay unhappy. And within that choice, whether you are conscious of it or not, is obviously predictable. And when things are predictable, it causes less anxiety. It causes our world to be structured. We know how to navigate through those things. Even though it is completely dysfunctional, even though you're unhappy, you are consciously and unconsciously making a choice. To make a choice, to exhibit a sense of courage, to do something different, that would create unpredictability. And unpredictability, this lack of structure, like I might have said before, lack of structure causes anxiety. We don't know how to navigate into that new life. Now, these theories are not new. The idea is, what do you want to do from this moment? And what do you want to do in this moment to make changes in your life? And if you're going to make changes in your life from this moment, like I always say, this is the first moment of the rest of your life. From this moment, what do you want to do? Yes, I got shit in my past too. I've done shit in my past too. And I was actually exploring this in a group dynamic just actually yesterday, and the gentleman was spiraling into his shame. What I did in the past, what I caused. And there is an understanding, look, I do believe we should feel a sense of shame. I think shame lets us know, God, that hurt. And I hurt other people in that. If we don't feel that sense of shame, we act shameless, where we can actually create more pain for ourselves and others. So I think there's a healthy component to shame. And as we're exploring with and this gentleman in the group, you could spiral in your shame. You can live in the past and you can see that. But what's available now? Now what's available from this moment on moving forward? Instead of this idea of spiraling down more into his shame and wherever that takes him, you can actually spiral up from your shame. And so there is a definitely change in behavior. And now what would that look like is you're going to have to create courage. And so that's kind of the idea behind this book, The Courage to be Disliked. It's a phenomenal book. I can't put it down. And it does. It kind of ruptures a lot of our own ideas as far as deterministic, as far as like cause and effect. And they're not denying that stuff has happened, cultural, family systems, your environment. I mean, all of those exist. And we still have the ability to choose within the present moment. I like to visit these sometimes, just introducing people to new books of my interest. If you have some books that you find interesting, please let me know. And the reason why is learning about different modalities, thought processes, and theories really takes us from being a one-dimensional person to a multi-dimensional person. And this is very important that I found on my own healing journey, because you have more to pull from, more ways of looking, more perspectives to see this situation from. And so if you're a bookworm like myself and want to challenge yourself to what I always say, have conscious shocks to the system and basically seeing things from these different perspectives, check this out, The Courage to be Disliked. Again, I don't want to slaughter the names of the authors. I think they're Japanese names, and I just don't want to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put them in the description down below. Check it out. It might be on audiobook. Apparently, this is an international bestseller. With over 3 million copies sold. It's a really fascinating book. And let me know what you think. Let me know what you think. If you read it, it's a very easy read, by the way. You don't have to have a degree to understand what they're talking about. It's just a dialogue going back and forth. I would love to know what you think about the book. I would love to know what you think about this episode. And again, my name is Shane Coyle. This is Man Uncaved. We need to come out of hiding.